All right, you may remember last week, Politico published a story stoking fear of Christian nationalism and crafting a narrative that the reelection of Donald Trump is going to unleash an army of Christian nationalists throughout the federal government. And one of the story's authors, Heidi Prisa, followed up with a cable TV appearance that offered a muddled and confusing description of Christian nationalists.
And the one thing that unites all of them, because there's many different groups orbiting Trump, but the thing that unites them as Christian nationalists, not Christians, by the way, because Christian nationalists is very different, is that they believe that our rights as Americans, as all human beings, don't come from any earthly authority. They don't come from Congress. They don't come from the Supreme Court. They come from God. The problem with that is that they are determining men, are determining what God is telling them.
Wow. I mean, can you imagine how those comments were received by those who actually understand the history of this country, or all of Enlightenment philosophy dating back for centuries, for that matter? Perhaps in response, Prisa, who you just saw, she has now penned a second piece this week addressing those comments which you just heard. And with me now to discuss this is Brian Burch. He's the president of Catholic Vote. He actually joined, along with Tony Perkins, this week to demand an apology from Politico for smearing the Christian faith. So, Brian, welcome back to Washington Watch. Great to have you.
Great to be with you.
All right. Well, I'm sure you just heard, we played a clip of Heidi Prisa. And before we discuss her most recent article, I'd like to just get your initial comments, your initial reaction when she made these comments.
Well, I think our reaction, like the reaction of many believers, whether Catholic or Christian or otherwise, was utter shock that somehow in mainstream media now it is a credible position to hold, that the position of our founders, the position of Thomas Jefferson, the position of the Declaration of Independence is now a threat to democracy. The idea that our rights don't come from government, they don't come from Congress, but instead come from a creator God, nature's God, has been the bedrock principle by which this entire country has operated. And frankly, I think this is not just a surprise, but really, I think, a shot across the bow. And I think Christian people need to wake up to the threat. This is clearly an effort to paint Christian people into a corner in order to play an electoral card this election, to shame us into thinking that if we vote for Donald Trump or we vote for someone who still believes in the core principles of this country, that we are no longer tolerated, that this is no longer a socially acceptable position. This is a utter remaking of this country. It is a form of revolution, and I think it poses a serious threat that we have to understand and pay attention to.
Absolutely, great point. And, I've never heard anyone accuse Thomas Jefferson, of all the founders, as being a Christian nationalist, but he is the one who penned what we all understand, that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and that they are endowed by their creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. I mean, Thomas Jefferson, no one can claim, was a Christian nationalist, but he put those. So anyways, going back to Prisa, Heidi Prisa, she has now responded with some lame non-apology, but she said that her comments were due to some clumsy words. I was interpreted by some people as making arguments that are quite different from what I believe. She later added, reporters have a responsibility to use words and convey meaning with precision, and I'm sorry I fell short of this in my appearance. All right. Do you consider that to be an apology?
None whatsoever. Thankfully, this apology only came about because of the courage of the head of the Family Research Council, Tony Perkins, and our organization to stand up to this. We wrote this letter to the ownership of Politico. We demanded an apology, we demanded a retraction, and we demanded a response because we believed that this kind of rhetoric is not only unfounded historically, it's dangerous. And this kind of rhetoric is leading to a growing sense of hatred and animus against Christian people, whether it be attacks on our churches or the weaponization of our government against Christians, or a larger cultural climate that holds that Christian believers are no longer legitimate Americans. And that is precisely what they are after. And her response, frankly, was a pretend apology that ultimately turned into another attack on Christians. And what she said is, it's fine to have this abstract idea about the founding of the country, but to the extent you bring your religious beliefs into the public square and seek to apply them when it comes to public policy and even candidates, you are violating the phony separation of church and state, which is nowhere in our Constitution. The Constitution is very explicit about the right to religious freedom, that we need religion, that the government's responsibility is to encourage and to promote the flourishing of religious activity. And this is just a very not so subtle attempt to kind of push religious people to the margins of this country and tell them, keep your mouth shut and make sure you don't vote, because that's what she's really after.
Yeah, that really is what she's after. And in fact, if we can, let's go back. I want to play that clip 7 one more time, because this was not a clumsy statement. This was calculated. This was thought out. She knew what she was saying. Play clip 7 one more time, please.
And the one thing that unites all of them, because there's many different groups orbiting Trump, but the thing that unites them as Christian nationalists, not Christians, by the way, because Christian nationalist is very different, is that they believe that our rights as Americans, as all human beings, don't come from any earthly authority. They don't come from Congress. They don't come from the Supreme Court. They come from God. The problem with that is that they are determining men, are determining what God is telling them.
Yeah, this was well thought out. She planned to say this, and now she's coming out with some lame apology saying, oh, just clumsy words, I'm sorry if you misinterpreted, literally blaming the hearers as misunderstanding what she said, and it could not have been more clear than what she was trying to say. Is behind all of this, Brian, an attempt really just to intimidate and silence Christians? Is that what we're watching here?
You know, I think that's true on the surface. There's no doubt there's a growing effort to intimidate and silence us, particularly in an election year when the Christian and faith vote will be decisive, as it always is. But I think there's something more dangerous here, and that is this growing kind of philosophical commitment on the part of the left. And you see those other two hosts sitting there nodding their heads as if she's not saying something absolutely crazy. Even watching it again, you're just shocked that she's even saying these words out loud. But the real message here is our religion is the true religion, and the Christian religion is phony and false and no longer should be advanced in this country. Don't tell me that climate change or gender, new gender theology, which is what it is not a different kind of religion. And what they're really saying is we need to move America in the direction of our new woke religion and displace Christianity. And we know as Christian people, that path leads to chaos and destruction. And it is only holding to this great tradition of this country, not that everyone will believe the exact same thing, but that the fundamental Christian truth that our rights don't come from government, that they come from a creator God who bestows on us our dignity and, yes, our rights. To the extent we abandon that, we will lose the United States of America. And we need to recognize the threat that this kind of not just political game, but this ideology represents.
Well said. Thank you, Brian Burch from Catholic Vote. We appreciate you so much. Thanks for coming on Washington Watch.